Experts by experience. Real conversations, real people, real stories. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Experts by Experience podcast. To be honest, it's just me here today. It's Mariam with you, and today I am joined by a very wonderful individual, somebody whose story has actually personally inspired me looking into, the face of adversity, overcoming things and transformation. So I'm here with the lovely Siyanda. Thank you so much for being here. I know your story is very powerful and personal. And I'm really honored to actually have this conversation here with you today because I relate to many of the themes that we've kind of discussed in previous conversations. So before we get into it, yeah, let's get into where you are now. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your life looks like today?
I'm Siyanda Mangaza. I'm 27. And at the moment, I'm just living. But my job role that I do, I work in diversity and inclusion. So if you don't know what that is, essentially it's making sure that the workforce that we attract is diverse in terms of characteristic and experience and thought. But then when they're in the business, then making sure that they feel like they belong, that they feel like they've got a seat at the table, that they've got the opportunity to progress and do what they want with their career without barriers. So yeah, that's me basically.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think even in you mentioning that you're, involved with DEI and like improving and removing barriers, that's even a big thing that we're gonna explore today. So even when reading up on you and like talking about the things that you've gone through, I recognize that your journey hasn't always been like the most positive and there were a lot of difficult moments along the way. But from conversations that we've had privately and things that you've actually shared publicly, you've always mentioned that your racial identity has played a significant role in the challenges that you faced growing up and probably influenced, your career today. So thinking back, what was your experience like growing up? Did you have like a sense of belonging, and how did your experience shape who you are today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. From the start, I was born in Birmingham, grew up from the ages of, well, being born and 8 years old in a place called Nechells, which is a super diverse area of Birmingham. When I was 8, my mum moved us to Wales. So lived in Cardiff and in a place called Whitchurch, and it is so undiverse.
Yeah.
Um, and moving to Wales was the first time that I actually acknowledged the color of my skin or the texture of my hair in a way that like wasn't positive at all. Um, so literally, I remember when we went to visit the school, like before we knew we were moving and we went to visit the school so I could see what it was like. And I remember they opened the classroom door and like just like 30 kids in like year 4, I think it was, just looked at me. But it wasn't like they were just looking like inquisitive. There was like a vibe and I couldn't really explain it, like obviously at that age. Um,
Yeah.
so I remember as soon as I started my first day, like the comments about my hair started, talking about like, why does your hair look like that? Because I had my hair in cane rows. And then it was like, your hair's weird. Like, why doesn't it look like ours? And it was taken, making fun of my accent or just like the way that I looked and stuff like that. And like, I never really like spoke on what was happening to me when I was in school because I just completely internalized it. That just bred like so much like insecurity and like self-esteem issues and just turned me into a person that was just like people pleasing and just looking for like validation of from people and wanting them to like me. And obviously that continued in through high school and then after school and just was a big part of my life for so long. And it took me until the circumstance that landed me in custody to
Yeah.
actually understand actually what my experience had been for all of those years, and that actually it wasn't a me issue, it
Yeah.
was an issue.
I hear that. Do you know what? I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you so much for giving us some insight. And, as a Black woman myself, I can definitely identify with your experience of moving from one area to another where there wasn't much diversity. So, another thing I actually wanted to ask you in terms of like your journey, at some points you were treated as both the victim and the aggressor. So how did that shift kind of feel, and what impact did it have on you given your particular situation?
Yeah, I think in my particular situation, and just to give like a bit of background on it, so like
Yeah.
in terms of the situation that landed me in custody, I went on a camping trip, which I don't even like camping. So again, I went on this
Me
camping.
neither.
Literally, I did it again to be a people pleaser because I wanted people to like me. So I went on this camping trip, and at multiple times within like the day and the evening, there were so many signs that showed that like I was in an unsafe situation. But again, I was internalizing things. I was thinking, oh, that look is just because it's like they just don't like me. I need to try and be more nice and more kind and more this, more that. Um, and then essentially what ended up culminating at the end of the night was after everyone was quite fueled with alcohol, I basically was attacked by 3 people in a racially aggravated assault.
Wow.
Um, so essentially, you know, in that situation, I don't think that anyone ever looked at me as a victim because, I was attacked and I managed to get away. And obviously, there's a much longer story to it, but we haven't got all the time in the world to talk through it. But yeah, I managed to get away. And essentially, I remember after a period of time, the police came and I thought, "Oh, thank God, like, someone's rang the police to, like, help me." And so I would, like, walk towards them and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming." And almost, like, fallen into their arms and then literally had, like, a handcuff just slapped straight on my wrist saying, "You're under arrest." And I was so confused.
Wow.
And honestly, like, looking back, I don't think anyone ever looked at me as a victim in that moment, even though there were so many things that pointed towards me being the victim, even before they knew all of the details, including like, the state of me, I've clearly been beaten at. Um, but I think as soon as whoever called the police and said, there's this girl, I think they said black and sturdy. They described me as on the phone.
Wow.
Probably as soon as the police dispatch like heard that straight away, I was the aggressor. Do you know what I mean? I was the
Yeah.
perpetrator. So, um, yeah, it's a lot. And I think only I considered myself to be a victim. Obviously, my family and my support system. But the actual justice system, the police, they really didn't consider me as that.
Yeah.
It's like they couldn't say, oh, she was upset because she was a victim. They would just use words like she was distressed or like she was making loads of sounds and I don't understand why. I was making lots of sounds because I was bawling, I was crying, like I'd just been attacked. But it's like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like
Yeah.
uh they couldn't even process that they were
Conceptualize that you were, yeah, I hear that. That must have been really so how did it feel to kind of go through that where there's kind of this imbalance between, what's happened or how you're feeling and how they're viewing you?
it was like um it was literally like I was reliving trauma whilst being in a trauma, like whilst experiencing a trauma. It was really strange, and I think in it all, again, I just internalized it. I thought it was a me thing, and I was like, "Why are they not understanding? Is it like, am I not getting my point across properly?" So then I would explain again, like what was going on, and that I am the victim. I've been beaten at. I shouldn't be arrested. You need to be like, going after the people who actually did something to me.
Yeah.
But they just weren't getting it. And like I say, like going through probably 12, 13 years of being like almost gaslighted about the experiences that I was having and made to feel like I was very much the problem, I just reverted back into that.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, obviously looking back, like hindsight is a beautiful thing. Um, Looking back, I just feel so sad for that girl who couldn't advocate for herself at the time because she was stuck in this like trauma and this situation while she was also having to deal with the fact that she'd just been beaten up by 3 people.
Yeah.
Um, and having to navigate the justice system as hard enough as it is, I
Yeah.
and my family had never been involved with the police or the justice system. So I had no idea how to weather that storm or what was the right thing to do and stuff like that. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm just going to tell the truth. I'm just going to give them all the information because, of course, they cannot think that I'm the perpetrator here. And once I give them all the information, they'll be able to they'll figure it out and they'll be like, oh, okay, we've made a mistake. We'll do the right thing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That must have been really, really difficult. Um, but one thing I do want to shed light on is that, as much as this has been a significant part of your story, could I add, especially going, your background and what you kind of experienced growing up in this monumental situation, this hasn't been all of your story. So that's why I wanted to kind of, unfold like, at what point did you truly start to believe in your own potential? The things that you've achieved today, being an award-winning D&I professional, being on the Working Chance Advisory Board. I read about you. You've done a lot of big things. Like, where did where did that switch or that shift come from? Like, how did you notice, you know what, I'm bigger than this situation and it's not gonna break me?
I think I have like my family to really thank for that. Like my mum is my biggest advocate. She's just an amazing woman. And throughout all of this, she's just spoken life into me and positivity and just urged me to remember who I am and what I am capable of throughout the whole experience. So I just kept playing that. Um, I did a lot of it in spite of all of the people that I felt like had wronged me or, hadn't had my best interest. Um, so I was running fueled on that, which really wasn't healthy. However, it definitely gave me like the push to do what I needed to do. Whereas in more recent months, and I'll say months, like I'm not going to pretend like it's been years that I've been a healed person because I don't really feel like I have been.
Yeah.
Um, I started doing it because I realized that I deserve it. Like I've realized that I deserve all the good things and I am a great person. So that is what has inspired me to do it. Like now is me. Like I'm inspiring me.
Was it only that you had such a strong, you know, sense of like self-belief and like you really wanted to prove others wrong? Was that the only thing that got you through, or was there anything in particular that acted as a support system?
I'd say the women that I met in there, some of the women, there are some who are really good friends of mine now, who I actually couldn't have probably got through it without. Um,
Yeah.
and that is the one really beautiful thing that I found in my experience of being in custody is that all of the women, not all of the women, a lot of the women that I was with, we built such amazing, strong relationships. And whether this is healthy or unhealthy, a lot of it was bonding through trauma, bonding through our
Yeah.
experiences and being that support system for each other where there wasn't any. And I was in prison when it was COVID. So I was sent to custody 10 days before the lockdown.
Wow.
So we were like on like 23.5 hour bang up. And, you know, I mean, that was on a good day.
Yeah.
Um, but we did we only had each other. So yeah, the women that I met in prison really shaped my experience and provided me with such support and a lot of times guidance because I was 21 going into prison. Like,
Yeah, very
as much
young.
at the time I thought that I was an adult and I was grown. Like, really, at 21, you're not. There
Yeah.
were a lot of women that really gave me that like mentorship, and advice and guidance. And yeah, gave me advice that I still use and value today.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I love that. Thank you so much. I think that's beautiful, especially if you're spending so much time in a place. It's really important to find community wherever you are. So I think that's always helpful. So, in regard to what you've kind of shared in your journey and experiences, why do you feel like it's important for, people who have gone through what you've gone through to kind of use their voice in these conversations when we're talking about social justice and dismantling systemic or racial biases within the system?
I think it's really important, because essentially if we don't have these voices, then like people are just not going to understand what's truly going on. So I think that's why it's really important for people, with lived experience to be using their voices where they can, obviously, to be able to not perpetuate systems that marginalize and oppress groups. You have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence and range to be able to have a thought that is steeped in bias, because we all do have biases, but to be able to have the thought
And
and to be
challenge,
able
yeah.
to identify that it is steeped in bias, you have to have such emotional intelligence and rage. And even people that do, they will still make the mistake and act from a place of bias. So yeah, basically, like, it's it's really hard to stop this from happening because it's such an ingrained, like, human sort of attribute and behavior.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
which, yeah, is again another reason why, like, the more voices that are at the table, the more people that are able to sit at the table and have a voice and just keep challenging people's perceptions, views, and their, like, immediate thought processes.
I hear everything you're saying. It's that increased empathy, that critical thinking, being able to like, deconstruct all these beliefs and biases that have been instilled between us. But yeah, thank you so much for that, Sienna. Do you know what? There is another question I did want to ask you before we wrap up. In terms of you becoming, a D&I professional in your place today, how did you get there from leaving custody and then working in kind of this sector where all you do is help and empower people and, ensure that there is equality and equity within the work environment?
Yeah, so I went to open prison
Mhm.
um within my sentence and was able to do ROTL. So the employer that I work at now, I started working with them whilst I was on ROTL. Um, and at first I worked as a recruiter, which was really, really good. And then, yeah, once I left custody, then I came more into sort of the D&I role, because how could I not?
Yeah.
Outspoken and literally strong sense of justice, wanting, like, to help everyone. And I'm so very empathetic, almost to a fault. And with lived experience, it just made perfect sense for me to step into this role. And luckily, my employer is really, really supportive and saw that as well. So made sure that I had this opportunity. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I think that's something that I really wanted to emphasize as well. Despite everything you've been through, you've managed to like rebuild yourself and use all your experiences, positive and negative, to kind of feed into this new work stream that you're in. So, for the final question, before we sign off, I do want to ask, what advice or encouragement would you give to others who are rebuilding their lives after custody?
So going off from what I said previously, once you've done what you need to do, in spite of them, whoever them is, don't then forget to start doing it for yourself.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. I love
Yeah.
that. But yeah, thank you so much, Siyanda. That was amazing. And again, reading about you, talking to you, your story has absolutely inspired me. And I love even what you've mentioned today, in spite of everything. I guess, where the motivations came from, that's a personal thing, but you still managed to, rebuild yourself despite what you've gone through and despite what society or, your upbringing have tried to, bestow upon your identity. So I will always love that about you. And yeah, I honestly wish you the best in everything that you do. And I hope that you continue to go to greater heights. But yeah, I think that is all for today. So thank you everybody for listening. And we'll be back with another episode. Experts by Experience is brought to you by Catch 22. For more episodes, visit www.catch-22.org.uk. Now playing on National Prison Radio.